Hi guys, so today I'm going to be reviewing American Monsters by Derek Landy, which is the conclusion, the last in his trilogy of the Demon Road books. And oh my god, was it a story? So I feel like the synopsis that they put on Goodreads is quite powerful, so I don't think I can really interpret that into my own words, so I'm sorry to do this, but I'm going to read the description. I know people dislike that at times, but this sounds epic, right? So the epic conclusion in the mind-blowing supernatural thriller from best-selling author Derek Landy, creator of international sensation Skullduggery Pleasant. Bigger, meaner, stronger, Amber closes in on her murderous parents as they make one last desperate play for power. Her own last hopes of salvation, however, rest beyond vengeance, beyond the abominable killers, living and dead, that she and Milo will have to face. For Amber's future lies in her family's past, in the brother and sister she never knew, and the horrors beyond imagining that befell them. Whoa. Okay. So I received this through the publishers and author via NetGalley, yada yada yada. You guys know that doesn't change my opinion, but I am very thankful to them for allowing me to read this early access. And I bet you're thinking, but Jem, this came out in August of 2016. I know, I have this horrible habit where when I know something's like the last in a series or whatever, I put it off forever because I don't want it to end, particularly if I like that series, and I guess I just really didn't want this to end. So I finally got around to reading this in March, and here's what I thought. Now, I do have a non-spoilery section and a spoilery section. The non-spoilery section, if you're interested, I have a review. Yes, I do, on Goodreads. I don't know why I had to check that. I always write my review on Goodreads. But I have a non-spoiler review on Goodreads, and then the spoilery bits are just exclusive to this little video, so lucky you. Anyway, I'm just going to pick off some of the points that I want to mention from the non-spoiler review, and then if you want to read some more of my non-spoiler thoughts, go ahead and check out the Goodreads review. But anyway, I gave this a 5 solid stars, and honestly I feel like these books have got better and better. So book 1, Demon Road, I gave a 4 stars. Book 2, Desolation, I gave a 4.5 stars. And lastly, thirdly, American Monsters, I gave a 5 stars. So clearly I've enjoyed them even more as the books have progressed, and that makes me happy. So Amber as a character was kick-ass in this final book. Honestly, I feel like she was so strong and determined, but in a sense she was losing her old self, which is quite alarming because it just seemed to happen so quickly. Like all of a sudden she just didn't care about anything, all of this crap was happening, and she was just like, I'm just going to revert to my demon self so I don't have to feel anything. So that hit me in the feels a little bit, and yeah, kind of sad but kind of cool to see different sides of her. Like, it was really scary seeing how evil she could become, especially when dishing out some of the punishments from the Shining Demons. Obviously, like in this book now, she's his representative, isn't she? So she has to go out and kill all the people that he wants her to kill. So it was really interesting seeing that job role, and we saw a lot of that mainly in like the first third of the book. Mainly that was a big point there. Despite that, in certain circumstances she was still a goofy mess, and I love that because that's the Amber that was just so down to earth, so I guess normal, if you know what I mean, and that's more relatable than her super hot demon self. I've got to say though, I really love the diversity of, there's a fly, I don't love the diversity of flies, anyway. I've got to say, I really love the diversity of like relationships that Landy explores, and like I guess sexual orientation, is that the correct term? I don't know. That club scene, whoa. That took things to a whole new level. I was like, oh, am I really reading this? What's going on? Yeah, anyway, it was nice to see the soft side of Amber, soft but not weak. I like to stress she still had determination and power even when she was her normal human self. And really on point with the humour. I found myself hysterically laughing out loud on numerous occasions. I just think Derek Landy really has that what's the word? That notch? I don't know. He just has the great balance of humour. My kind of humour, at least. I found this book really funny when it was supposed to be funny. There was a few scenes that kind of seemed to focus on, well, from a character's point of view, it sounded to me like she was talking a bit of body shaming, which was an interesting topic to bring up in this book. I guess I wasn't expecting it. Was quite powerful, but to be honest it was so out of the blue I don't think I appreciated it as much as I could have done. It was just like all of a sudden she was talking all this talk and I was like, oh okay then. I got my heart broken way too many times in this book. Like there were so many times where I get attached to a new character and all of a sudden they'd be missing or dead within like the next few chapters, you know, and I was just praying that Landy wouldn't add any more new characters. The further I got into the book, I was like, please don't meet anybody new, please, 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 run away whilst you can. I just didn't want them to die because I knew I'd get attached to them, because Derek Landy seems to have this knack, that's the word I was looking for, a knack for it, where he just writes really well fleshed out characters, even if they're only supposed to be in the scene for like a couple of seconds. And you just, well, for me personally, I just grew a bond to them just like that, because they just sounded like my kind of person, you know, or just someone that was easy to read from and understand, you know. And to have them gone within a space of like a couple of minutes, it just took a lot out of me. So I was pretty much an emotional mess whilst I was reading this, but I have no regrets. In terms of structure, I did find this one to be a little bit strange. I don't remember the other books feeling this way, but sometimes I felt like it could have been, like, sentences could have been written in a way that made it easier to read, because I don't know, you'd have to read it possibly to understand, but I just felt like it kind of halted the experience a little bit, because it felt like it shouldn't have read the way it did. It's really difficult to describe, but I'm just going to leave it here. Okay, so I do have one problem, and that's the way fall was described. I don't know how I hadn't noticed this before. Maybe fall wasn't described in this way to this extremity. I didn't notice it, but in this one, I have a quote. I think it's a direct quote. I can't remember. I think it's either paraphrased or it's a direct quote. I'm sorry, I can't be specific. But it says, oh no, sorry, it is paraphrased. I did write that. One of the descriptions was a thing without gender, and I know fall is literally like a demon, like a monster sort of thing. I just think that the way that sentence was structured was just a little bit, like, I guess, insensitive. Like, he could have worded it completely different, because to me that stands out as like, because he has no gender, he's a thing, do you know, or like identifies with no gender. I think he literally has no gender, and I'm probably reading way too much into this, but that just, I don't know, it spiked something in me a little bit, and I was like, oh, I don't like the way that's described. I'm probably just being like really sensitive, but I thought I'd mention that. But aside from that, this book pretty much had no faults. I really thoroughly loved it. Kind of bitter that I left it this long to read it, but at the same time I'm not, because that meant that the story in my mind just lasted for a much longer time, you know. And I mean, even to this day, even after reading it, it's still in my mind. I'm still thinking of scenes that happened, and I just, this series, this trilogy is just great, absolutely amazing, love it. I mean, I devoured it in like 2 days, so that's saying something. Anyway, so that's it for, oh crap, my battery's about to die. Anyway, that's it for the non-spoiler section. I'm gonna see how much of the spoilers I can get in before my battery dies. Okay, so I wasn't actually expecting to have spoilers until like the last little bit, and I was like, oh my god, everything's happened. Oh, I've got to talk about it. So I'll start with the part where Amber and Kelly and all that are at the convention for that TV show. I can't remember what it's called. Oh my gosh. I knew the person from like the fandom board was going to be her parents. I had a gut feeling that certain messages, like just in this book, I didn't know it all along, certain messages I was just like, something, it's leaving a bad taste in my mouth. I tell you what shocked me though, I was not expecting Warwick and everyone else to be murdered. That was one of the deaths that really, really got me. I was actually quite furious. I was so upset that they were killed, especially too, like, Amber didn't even get a chance to do something. Like, that was just horrid. I absolutely hated that part. But like, honestly, not the dog, never the dog. I can just about get over like the friends and everything, but as soon as an animal's included, I just get all sorts of like hysterical. Honestly, just thinking about it now makes me want to cry a little bit. I know I'm getting really overly like emotional, but that scene was like the worst. I hated it, but it was written so well, but I hated it. But it was so good, but I hated it. But honestly, I wasn't expecting a catfish trap so extensive as the whole like forums page. I didn't think that her parents would go so far from pretty much the very beginning to sort of lure her into a false pretense of friendship with some people that had like-minded interests. That was so messed up. Like, it must have been really deep rooted when you think about it, like to the extent that the mother in particular went to watch the shows and everything and just oh, that was just so weird. And this sounds silly, but it's scary when I think about like murderers at conventions, because I go to conventions too, not as much as I'd like to, but that's given me like an added fear now. And I know this is all fantasy and I know it's not going to be to that extreme, but that actually freaked me out at how easy everything seemed to happen. Like, damn, security needs to sort their shit out. But I mean, they were like monsters, so that's understandable. And I think I'm safe from beautiful red demons, so that's good. Unless someone's in cosplay and they go a bit crazy, I don't know. So since Amber was the Shining Demons representative in this one, and you see a lot of that, I feel like the first 40% or so was like major boss battles. Because I mean, a lot of the time she was either fighting people or getting offerings from them. By the time we got to the bit with the hillbillies, it actually started to feel a little bit like formulaic, so I was expecting something to happen, and like in a certain pattern, I guess. But that's also the point where things got turned a bit, and Betty and Bill were kind of reintroduced to it properly, if that makes sense. I mean, the things they do never fail to shock me, so it was good at that time that we had a bit of a game changer, otherwise I would have got a little bit bored. Okay, so I mentioned the clubbing scene a little bit, but oh my god, Amber went insane. That scene was crazy. She was threatening people and just going berserk, and then like she was so sexual and just everything was nuts. Well, she could have been on the cover of Nuts for the way she was acting, but yeah. But honestly, even though she was crazy, I like that she stood up for herself. You know, when she was in the prison and everything, when people were calling her like sexist, derogative things, I like that even though she went to terrible extremes, I like that she wasn't taking any crap. Okay, so when we got to the part where, I can't remember where exactly they were, but they started to hunt down like that killer clown, and then by the time they met the girl called Sarah, I was actually, it's a silly thing to worry about, but I was wondering why she wasn't like concerned about her parents wondering where the hell she was, especially with all these murders happening to children around like the similar age. So that part concerned me a little bit, like why was she allowed to stay out so late, especially with the things happening that were happening, you know? Where were her parents all this time? I wonder about these things. When Glenn came back and could talk, I was so happy. My heart soared, did a little happy dance, it made my life. Okay, granted it didn't really help too much with the fight with the demon trucker and Amber. It was just nice to see that his soul actually found his body after the extent that Amber had gone through in hell to get back, so I'm just glad that it worked. And his dramatic entrance with his speech of darkness and evil and everything like that. At first I was like, what, is he actually being serious? But I just remembered, oh, this is Glenn's humour, he's being an idiot. Milo not being a demon anymore was a huge shock. That was just a sudden like, oh, by the way, you know, he can't heal anymore in his car, good luck. I was just like, oh, well, I guess technically he didn't want to be a demon anymore and stuff like that, but I didn't actually understand the consequences of not having the powers and not being able to do much in terms of battle, like fighting and stuff, so that was a major shock. Honestly, there's just been so many twists and turns in this book, and I've hardly been able to predict anything at all. The novel certainly kept me on my toes. Okay, you know when Amber was taking all her selfies and everything in front of doors? I was happy that it actually had a purpose. At first I was just like, oh my god, is Derek Landy just trying to like target teenagers and kind of connect and bond and be hip and cool? But no, I'm glad that it actually had a purpose. I honestly did think, that's a cheap move, but I completely take it away. It made sense and it was actually really quite clever. The fact that it was to remember a particular door to go to the specific place she needed to go when she was using Shanks's key, that was really smart actually, so I commend him on that. Quite genius. Oh, it was interesting finding out that the FBI agents weren't who they said they were initially. Like all that time they were like running every time they like showed up, and really technically they didn't need to, I guess. I did actually enjoy the cat and mouse chase that they had with Amber and Milo, because they weren't there enough to annoy me. When they bumped into Amber when she came out of the toilet, it was a little bit anticlimactic because I was like expecting this whole scuffle, I guess, and it was just really quite calm saying, oh, by the way, we're not FBI, we're here to help you, sort of thing. So I was like, oh, okay. In saying that, it did spark my interest into what line of work they were like talking about. That really intrigued me, I guess. I just had to charge up my camera a little bit, but I think I was saying that the police detective work did spark my interest a little bit. Also, my volume's a little bit down, I'm a little bit more tame because someone's just come home. But yeah, police fighting monsters and stuff like that, that was interesting. I kind of wish we'd have found out sooner, because I would have liked to have known more about that. Maybe a spin-off or something kind of about the investment in that kind of organisation would have been interesting. And it was cool that Molly, who was Amber's brother's like girlfriend, kind of set it up. That was really interesting, because at first I wasn't really too sure why she was in the dream kind of things that her brother and sister was in, but it makes sense that she went on to do great things to help, you know. The fact that Amber was dreaming about her brother and sister that had obviously been died and eaten, I thought that was a really cool aspect. I thought that was a really good addition to the story, but I feel like it came in a little bit too late for me. The twist. I couldn't believe that Amber had actually let her parents eat the Shining Demon, but I just couldn't see how else she would have deceived them. I didn't understand how it would have been possible that it wasn't the demon, you know? The fact that it was actually the Shining Demon's brother was just a great twist. I didn't see it coming. I guess in the 2-hour gap that we didn't see earlier on in the story was them going back to Desolation Hill to get him. I didn't like being kept in the dark for that part, but to be honest, I kind of forgot about it and the rest of the plot made up for it quickly. At this point I was like, right, I really don't know what to think of Fall, because back in the other books there were some points where he was quite pitiful and I felt bad for him and I liked him, but after like what he did to Big Mouth and just the way he treated him, that was actually really vile. It really shocked me, but at the same time Big Mouth, who was Edgar, is that his name, he wasn't a nice person, like, in, you know, to begin with. He did help Amber to get Glenn's soul, but no one deserves their limbs cut off, their eyes removed, probable death, and a likely chance of staying damned in the torturous hell. Only he didn't get that kind of death, I suppose, because Amber fulfilled her promise and took him back, even though he pretty much disintegrated, I believe, when he got back to the human realm. I honestly didn't know how long he'd survive anyway, so yeah. Priest from the Blood Dime King's castle was the king. I had my suspicions that he wasn't just some regular priest, to be honest. But again, I was waylaid. So much had happened after that that I'd completely forgot about my suspicions, and so I was shocked when it happened, if that makes sense, but I still knew. Really confusing, but my feelings. It was still shocking though seeing him end the Shining Demon in the battle with Bill and Betty near the end. I thought he would have been more, I don't know, tolerant to one of his like minions, I guess, but I guess not. So after like the big showdown where obviously Betty's dying out, it was crazy that she'd followed her back through the triangle thing or whatever it was, back into her bedroom or whatever, but yeah, she still held her hand as she was dying. Now my cousin Ebony, she read this book and she thought that was sweet, she liked that, if I remember correctly, but I think it's kind of hypocritical because a bitch tried to eat her. And if Amber hadn't been so resilient and like strong and determined not to die, she would have been dead. I mean, when she didn't get killed and eaten, she was stalked continuously until Amber had the upper hand, so I don't understand the desire of wanting to hold her hand whilst Betty died. To me, that didn't make sense. But in saying that, some people might think that's sweet, but if you think about it, Amber still didn't put her out of her misery. She let Betty bleed to death, and I'm sure that must have been somewhat painful. So honestly, I don't really know what got her all sentimental in the last few minutes. I guess maybe she had a little bit of affection just because out of the two parents, she showed the little bit of kindness every so often. She was a little bit maternal, but then it was gone as soon as Bill turned up, you know. So maybe she just had that affection there, but I personally can't see that. Okay, so we're back to all the events going on. Everybody thinks it's a happy story. Everything looks to be good. Everybody's dead that needs to be dead, to a degree, I suppose. And then that what's her name, Bird or whatever, that FBI person kills Milo. Another death, and I couldn't deal with it. I really couldn't deal with it. I didn't think he'd actually die, but obviously without his demon powers anymore, he couldn't heal himself. I know we've had tons of deaths over these books, but seriously, Milo was the last straw. I couldn't hack it. I just really couldn't deal with it. It was the last thing that really tore me up. But after that, I really enjoyed that Kelly, Amber and Glenn stayed together as a little team of their own, even after the deaths of Warwick and everybody and Two and the rest of the friends. I did want to hear Kelly talk about that and her emotions, I suppose. But the subtle mention of them being in her new tattoo was really sweet. It was enough for me to grasp the fact that they obviously meant a lot to her, so that was a really nice touch. It ended kind of like a normal story, actually. It was still powerful, although I really didn't care too much about the side kind of story of the police chief's missing son. Did like how not everything was wrapped up with the clown and Clarissa that was still missing. So I do hope there's a window open for more books in the future, maybe just little companion novels or something. But overall, yep, that's the end of my spoilers. My battery's flashing again. Sorry this was rushed. Let me know what you thought about this book. Spoilers, make sure you mention it's spoilers before you write it in the comments. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll speak to you soon. Bye. Desolation Hill. Desolation Hill. I couldn't remember what the second book was called. Desolation, just Desolation. Yeah.